remember the exact model, but the Canadian Solar was installed in 2012, so had it in for 10 years now. And it's been generating, as I say, around about the 38 to 42,000 kilowatt hours a year, depending on how good a year we've had in terms of generation. We've got it also through the feed-in tariff, which is no longer in existence or of any note. So we get paid something like 13 pence a kilowatt for every kilowatt we generate. We can export it to the grid, but we've never exported anything to the grid simply because our baseline consumption for the campus is higher than the solar panels can ever generate. So we consume absolutely everything that we make, which is even more beneficial for us because obviously we get less per kilowatt that we export than we consume, which means that from a financial perspective, it's generating us around about £10,000 worth a year, and that is about £6,000 worth of feed-in tariff and about £4,000 worth of offset. Now, what I mean by offset is obviously if we're generating it and using it, we're not buying it. Therefore, that's based on the cost of the current electricity that we're not actually buying off the grid. So that's our offset cost plus our feed-in tariff cost. So the system itself cost us about £70,000 to put in. So it's paid for itself already. So it's now just generating pure profit, and it's on over a 20-year period. So whatever we make now just goes back into the coffers. In terms of maintenance-wise, hardly ever had anything really. I think we've had the guys in 2 or 3 times who installed it, just to have a quick check over the system, make sure everything's still running. We've got the front end, so I can see on the front end if there's any particular issues, if there's any generation issues. Generally, I can see it from the outputs.
Cleaning?
Cleaning, all the guys do is maybe a couple of times a year they'll go out with a light brush and just give it a little bit of a dust down.
That's an install company, yeah?
No, that's our guys. I'll take you out. So you out. So see, we've got between here, these 2 sections here, we've got another 2 sections over the back. We did an initial survey just to see. So this is southeast. So in terms of positioning wise, we did a few surveys just to make sure that we were getting the benefit in terms of location, in terms of any shadowing that we might have got from surrounding buildings. Yeah. So these were put in just in order to maximise that. So there was some modelling carried out at the time. We had some issues around fixing, clearly because this being a single ply roof membrane, it was a bit of an issue, so we had to just use ballasts, so plastic bases and ballasts.
So they're just sat on there, they're not screwed into anything?
Yeah, they're just sat on there and they're just weighted down with the gravel.
But they held up to the storms that we've just had,
absolutely.
So they'll hold up to pretty much anything.
Nothing's moved, moved. And these have been in, as I say, these have been in for 10 years now.
Are there any effects on the environment from these at all?
In terms of?
Like negative effects?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I suppose from a...
Are they disposable?
I suppose from a, that's what I was going to say, I think from a disposable perspective there'll be an end of life issue with them.
What is the lifetime of a solar panel? Do we know? Until they degrade enough to stop working, or I don't know.
Well,
must have a design life, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we were told at the time that we should possibly start to see some degradation after about 10 years.
That's right.
We're not really seeing that, but
and that'll be you'll notice that from an output.
No, not really. Now, yeah, so we're not necessarily seeing those levels of degradation. So they're all different rated as well. They're different rated inverters.
532 volts DC at 1.6 amps. And it's converting that or inverting that into 230 or 235 at 2.3 amps.
Which is not bad on such a dull day, I suppose.
Yeah,
especially if you've got a bank of them, you know.
Yeah. I see they're all rated slightly differently.
Yeah.
Because they'll all be rated to a separate bank out there.
So that's 2 kilowatts coming through. And another 2.7 kilowatts.
So
And that
see,
one's-
like the summer when the college is out. So is there like a way to
Running a building of this size, even during the summer,
Oh.
I mean, we're still, the campus actually only closes between Christmas and New Year effectively, and I think Good Friday, Easter Monday, but other than that, the campus is always operating.
Oh.
So even during our highest day of generation, even things like our systems that are running, you know, all our ICT systems, server rooms, etc.,
Yeah.
is more than enough.
Oh.
So they're really just keeping those ticking over. Yeah, it obviously as the solar generation increases and our demand decreases, we close that gap, but we
Yeah.
never get to the point where
Yeah,
we're actually exporting. But if we ever did,
Yeah.
then we would just export to the grid and we would claim that back at a separate rate. Never had to do it in 10 years, not once.
Ah.
Not once. So we've never quite tracked it to see exactly what our baseline is at its maximum and what our maximum demand is, to see how big a gap that actually is.
Ah.
Is there no any power bank for them, no?
Batteries.
Any power battery?
No.
No. Just go to the
Straight into our system, our distribution system, and that's it.
Yeah, I guess if you're using it and you're using all of it, there's no need to store it. So, you know, it would be of limited use, wouldn't it? Because we're not having spare to charge anything up.
So we've got a generation meter outside that next to our main incoming electricity meter. So we just take a reading from that every 3 months, submit it to Scottish Power, and then they calculate how much they're due us.
So you said you can save some about 10,000 per year, yeah? 10,000 pounds.
In terms of value, it's about £10,000 a year that's actually making us over and above what we've actually paid for it.
So it depends on the weather over a year, yeah?
Yeah, so it fluctuates a little bit. Some years we get 38,000, some years we get 42. Depends how good a year it's been in terms of solar. You know,
Yeah.
if we get a really good spring in summer, then we can generate a lot more. To be honest with you, even a long dry winter, if we've got limited cloud cover, we can still get a reasonable generation.
Yeah.
It can make a difference.
Yeah.
It's never getting to peak summer levels, obviously, but it can tick itself over quite nicely.
In Scotland especially, it's noticeable that the winter days are extremely short and the
Yes.
summer days are extremely long.
Yes,
And,
so
and
we're getting
so you get peak generation just when you don't really need it because
Yeah.
it's in the middle of summer. But
Correct.
if the building absorbs that amount anyway, then
that's absolutely it. So,
it's a
so
no-brainer.
that was why when we looked at it originally, we set on that the 200 panels and the 50 kilowatt system because we kind of calculated that was probably about it's going to maximise our demand.
yeah,
Because the last thing we didn't want to be just churning it back into the grid. We wanted to be using it.
yeah.
So it gives us the best output. But in terms of maintenance wise, I can count 4 or 5 times over the periods where we've ever had any kind of issues with it. And primarily the issues we've had have been mainly from a connectivity perspective rather than an inverter perspective. So connecting through to Sunny Portal or through to the Solar Fox, it's mainly been a communications issue rather than an actual physical issue.
Yeah, I mean, there's no moving parts, is there?
Other
So,
stuff, yeah, exactly.
it's all electrical or electronic monitoring systems. So the panels themselves, there's nothing to do, as you said earlier.
Not
Give
as long
them
as
a
we're looking
brush
after
off.
them, just giving them a little bit of a clean every now and again. That's
Yeah.
that's the honest way.
So that will send you.
So that sends us all the data. It
Yeah.
sends the data it sends the data to Sunny Portal, we then log into the Sunny Portal and we can access all our data from there.
Right, so it's monitored externally by a
Yes.
third party sort of thing.
Yes.
Right, cool.
And
Thank you very
that's
much.
for the whole site. And that little white box there is our photovoltaic PV meter. So that's our generation meter. And obviously we've got an isolator there for the solar PV as well.
So that one belongs to Scottish Power.
That's Scottish Power. That's
that
ours.
one belongs to your.
Yeah. If you press the black button at the top right, it should give you a wee reading.
I've got a total reading there.
Reading.
That's a total in kilowatt hours. And that's, almost 500,000.
Yeah.
400,000 kilowatt hours.
Which, when you think back to what I showed you upstairs,
Yeah.
is
kind of, yeah, it's about right, isn't it?
And there's the schematic there for the layout.
Right, of course, because we do need to have. Oh, we look at that as well. So that's similar, I think, to the one that's upstairs, isn't it, that we took?
Yes, should be the same.
Aye. So this is what we're looking at now. Isolator switches and then the actual distribution boards, which is where the thing gets fed into the power for the college.
Yes.
Cool.
So that's obviously supplied through bypass that meter
Yeah.
straight in.
Yeah.
So here, there's from 2012. There's a generation every year. Obviously this is us in this year now, so you can see if you hover over it, we can see each month and we can see each generation.
We haven't had summer yet.
No, we haven't summer yet. So you can see from there, 2021 is 45. 45. It just changes every year. 46. So
And
sometimes
that's in.
that's in kilowatt. That's in kilowatt hours. So that's its output. Yeah.
Well, that's the mega
Yeah, megawatts.
watt hours. Yeah.
Yes,
So that's
correct,
thousands
sorry.
of kilowatt hours.
Yes. So and we can go into individual year and go into individual days if I want.
Yeah.
So I'll show you there's today. There's yesterday's profile. So when the sun was shining, you go back to last week, you'll start to see things start to pick up a little bit more. There we go.
There were nice days last week.
Yeah, there we go. We can start to see kind of. So we can drill that down quite to whatever extent that we want.
Yeah.
Export it to whatever we want, and then look at it, as I say, from month to month. What's the best months of the year? You can see there generally, where we've actually benefited from it. Some months are a lot better than others in the report.
So it still is a massive difference, sevenfold difference between what
Yeah.
you generate in January and what you
Oh
generate.
yeah,
in April.
yeah, definitely. I mean, there you can see January, February, and suddenly March we're up to 4,500, and suddenly we've got a brilliant April.
Yeah, which is interesting in itself, isn't
Fantastic.
it? That April's better than
April-
the summer.
Yeah, and in actual fact, it's funny if you look back. You actually see from year on year, April and May tend to be very good, and we were debating this the other week. There, when we first put this in 2012, it was the opposite. It was June and July.
Yeah.
In
as
the
you would
last
expect.
few years, it's more April and May. And we were wondering if this is an effect of climate change.
Yeah.
By the time we actually get to June, July, and August, we're getting a lot more cloud cover. We're starting to be, but we tend to be getting sunnier days at the lead
beginning
up
of the
to the
year.
longest day, which is obviously 21st of June. That period is the best generation period that we've had. We can see that when years gone by. Look, there's April, there's May, and then it starts to
Yeah.
taper off. It's never July, August, June, July, August. It's always April, May, June.
Yeah.
Go figure. Don't know
It's
why.
it's time for holiday.
Well, it could be, but if you go back far
Easter.
enough, look, this is what I'm starting to say. Look, there's 2014.
It's
That
a different
profile
profile.
changed. Don't know why, but that profile changed from the middle of the last decade